Hello, Professor Aaron. This is the second part of my video. I just recorded this, and for some reason, it didn't have any sound, so I'm re-recording. Yes, so I also wanted to just touch back, we'll conclude the first video I sent you in regards to Colin, and it's kind of based off your lecture and what you talked about, what was talked about in the articles. I know that narrative therapy based on how what you stated in the lecture was more the biases that came with it when it kind of uh was in the developmental stages, such as like the narrative therapy based on like that was kind of used in marginalized communities, such as communities of color, and the biases that come with that, such as um if a marginalized community lived within a certain area, and the trauma that they were experiencing, such as living in a parent household or impoverished neighborhood, the biases within that, like when you think of the narrative, almost like this, um, as I mentioned, I want to restate, I said in the video that didn't have any sound, where like it's almost like monkeys in a barrel mentality, just trying to get out of this community, and the trauma that goes with that, and the bias that, if you are part of one of these marginalized communities, your narrative is more or less based on anything is better than what almost like they were raised in. And though that could be the story for some, it's not the story for all, because just because you are part of a marginalized community doesn't mean that the trauma is the same. And when narrative therapy, the whole premise behind it is creating this new story, in a sense, the story of, okay, a traumatic event, or that kind of change the trajectory of a person's life or mood or mental health status, creating a new narrative into maybe how a different perspective on how you can look at the trauma that was experienced, and kind of writing your own story and giving the client autonomy. This kind of brings me to Colin. One of the bigger issues that he had, as we talked when I in the narrative therapy video, was one of his presenting problems, um, is Colin's lying. Kind of this narrative that he's created, these fictitious stories in his head that didn't actually happen. And an example of that could be with his wife, Hannah. This story that he created, that she was infertile, and her using holistic medicine. And he voiced to Dr. Taylor that the only reason why she was pregnant is because this man she was with had this magical sex or whatever that created this child, where the truth is Colin had a vasectomy, though therefore he was not able to procreate with Hannah, based on a decision that he made in his 30s, long before he met her. And part of kind of solution-based therapy, which is what we're talking about now, would be that he would have to essentially rewrite his stories and his narrative therapy to, from an honest standpoint, to even create productive solutions for him, because the whole premise behind solution-based therapy is creating solutions in the rethink process, which in the story that was created in narrative therapy, or rewriting the story, it has to be built on an honest foundation, so that you can think of solutions that are actually would be beneficial to the client. And the only way that you can do that is you have to have a truthful narrative, which is also something that's important within the working alliance between the clients and uh the therapist. So for example, with Colin, if he had told his ex-wife Hannah the truth in the beginning, it could have avoided all the mental anguish and interventions that she made, that was honestly based off a lie. Even Colin admitting that she was pregnant now, she maybe if he would have been truthful and honest, maybe adoption could have been an option, or IVF or something like that, where, just another intervention. But because he was dishonest with Hannah and created this negative narrative that something was wrong with her, and ultimately the reason why they couldn't conceive is based off something that is going on with her that's beyond his control, and that was a lie. He told many lies to um, Dr. Taylor, and in solution based therapy, it's kind of like, I know we talked, I think it was in the insert with the therapist Kim Berg, where she talked about solutions with the client, and in order to um, create solutions that are productive, you have to have um, your narrative about, or the trauma, you have to look through the lens of an honest standpoint. And in the case with Colin, because he was so dishonest about pretty much all the things that he told Dr. Taylor, it would be hard to be able to think of interventions or goal setting that would be productive for him, because it's kind of hard to know what was the truth and what was actually a lie. Or I know that in episode 3 it talked about, Dr. Taylor said that he was in the head of other people and kind of creating a story based off how he felt. And I know she, as I said in the last video, she even created kind of this possible diagnosis of narcissism, and him wanting to be like so bad by these people that he's identified as like people of um prestige. um he'd rather create this narrative that's based off a fictitious story than to be comfortable with himself, and um him having a time, and him having some autonomy over self to say, hey, these things occurred and this is how it actually happened. And in solution based therapy, a goal for him could be like a positive, like I would say the strengths would be when he is honest and he is giving the truthful story. It might not mean that he's going back to Hannah and telling her everything, because as he stated to Dr. Taylor, this idea that she left him because he would no longer be able to provide this facade of this strong, rich man, successful businessman, where that was even based off a lie. And he disclosed that to Dr. Taylor. Excuse me. In the end, and it's in order to create solutions, it could be that he's journaling and actually starting with taking the stories, because there is an element in trauma in every story. And even him, the constant lying, I'm sure that it comes from a place of trauma. Usually it does, so I would even say that him journaling, and it's kind of like a fresh start, whether it be with Dr. Taylor or another therapist, where even just taking the story with Hannah, for him to, tell her the truth finally about having a vasectomy when she's serving him with divorce papers while he's in prison, was it was intentional. The intention behind it appeared to be that he wanted to be hurtful, and because in a sense he was exposed, he's still trying to deflect instead of him just being truthful about who he really was and what he was really going through. That again, that happened even in the story with the inmate that he got in the near death fight with. And kind of the weakness to solution based therapy is that you have to be willing to be honest. And in the case of like Colin, that's part of his presenting problems is the lying. So it's getting to the core of why he feels he needs to lie, getting to the core of why he feels that he has to have this acceptance by people, and him actually being okay with, even if he doesn't get that acceptance, that that's okay, that he can move forward, that he can create a narrative for himself that's actually based on truth. And it in order for solution based therapy to work, or to even think of any interventions, they have to come from a place of actual solutions that are productive for him, for his actual life, and not the story that he's said, in a sense. Again, I want to apologize about the late emails you're getting in the video. Please, I will email this video to you as I did with the other. I hope you have a great weekend and a good night. Thank you so much.